In a moment we'll look at an internal challenge and an external challenge, but we'll just remind ourselves of the curse model first. We challenge what is unacceptable, and that will be language or behaviour. We explain the reasons why. You may well be looking at a breach of the code of conduct. It could be a breach of the criminal law. It may well be that a police officer or an external role actor is demonstrating poor role model for the community. We'll be looking to establish a solution, which could be as simple and as short as stop now, but may need an action plan which has got short and long-term aspects to it, which will be smarter in its approach, which means there's an end goal you're trying to find, and which will be enforced, because what's the point in coming up with a solution if we don't make sure it happens? So let's apply it in a couple of occasions. Oops. A response car driver has wandered into your office embarrassed because they have parked illegally on double yellow lines whilst they bought a newspaper. So that's not a good reason. The car park attendant has clamped them. How are we going to make that into a curse model challenge delivery? I need to challenge the fact that you've parked on double yellow lines for no good reason. It's unacceptable behaviour on your part to park illegally for no good reason. It's unprofessional. It prevents the police service in a very bad light. This will not increase confidence in local policing. It will suggest to the public, as it does to me, on first sight, that you must be a lazy individual who has little regard for obeying the law. We should be role models for the community. Does this mean that you as an officer are unreliable generally? Certainly, the organisation has been brought into disrepute, and therefore you have followed a breach of the code of conduct. Where you are parked is on yellow lines. There must be a reason for that, which means that it may well be that you've inconvenienced the public in some way. And having no police vehicle available to us at this moment means you've reduced temporarily our capacity to deliver a quality of service. The first thing is, do not park like this again. As this is a personal breach of the law, then I would expect you as the individual to be paying the fine yourself. And I'll be wanting you to make sure you're focusing on doing the job right in the future. I want to know that I can trust you. And so, how will I enforce that? Well, I'm going to be monitoring your driving issues. I'll be checking that you've paid the fine. I'll be monitoring for other forms of potential laziness. And I'll review in 1 month. I'll link to the PDR. I'd want to find something positive to say. If I don't know the individual, I have no more information available, I would want to remark about the value that response car drivers have for the organisation. There may be a point of welfare to check. If someone is behaving in a way that's not appropriate, it may be there's a reason for it. Have they got a problem? Is there a welfare issue? It would be important to check for that at the commencement of the challenge in those circumstances. Scenario 2. A counsellor is livid that he was not invited to attend a neighbourhood meeting to discuss antisocial behaviour. He shouted rudely at the PCSO, who had rung up the counsellor, to apologise for this omission. How are you going to manage that issue? Well, you're meeting the role actor. You're going to check the facts first of all, and once they're confirmed, you're going to challenge that behaviour towards a member of your staff. It's unacceptable language to shout rudely at a colleague and a partner. The reasons why is that it represents the counsellor in a very unprofessional light. It's certainly unproductive to future partnership working. The counsellor, elected, represents individuals within their ward, but also represents the council generally, and in this way it's been very poorly. The police and council are partners. The first rule about partnership working is understanding that at times people are human and make mistakes, and that we need to try and make sure that those aren't repeated. And of course, we also need to say that it's completely unnecessary to shout in this way. Simply discussing it would have resolved the issue. Remember, the member of staff had already recognised their error and was ringing to apologise, which was a very reasonable step to take at that point. The solution is, please, councillor, stop now. Do not shout at my colleagues. As you explore the issue, you may well suggest that they might think it appropriate that an apology is relevant. You may well suggest that the role actor should meet with the PCSO in order to discuss how we can make sure that the problems don't happen in the future. And there's a role for the candidate here to facilitate that meeting. And also, clearly, this has happened because something went wrong in setting up a meeting. There are going to be future meetings. The candidate should now take responsibility for the next meeting to ensure that things are going to go right, and that actually the relationship between the role actor and the colleague who's been shouted at can be put right. Now, clearly, enforcement with external role actors is not simple. However, clearly you would monitor. There has to be some edge to this, although it's going to be delicate because you're in the business of building partnership relations and making things work together. On your first occasion, you're not going to want to alienate working with an important member of the community and an important partner. However, our organisation and standards are there to be upheld, and so it would be necessary to say that if the councillor was to continue to behave in that way, then it may prove difficult to work with that person. And also, as a representative of the council, it might prove necessary to make reference to the council leadership itself about the behaviour should it go on. Just as in the first scenario, find something positive to say afterwards. It will be there. If you haven't got anything in the actual story so far, then draw back on councillors. Councillors are volunteers who give up their time to help fellow residents in their area and to make the area safer. So you can always draw back on the generic goodness in any role, but hopefully you've also got something to work with from the storyline. And that's the conclusion of our look at curse. We challenge the unacceptable language behaviour, giving the reasons why, finding a solution, and then enforcing it in a positive way that still values the person that you're working with. If you remember, or if you have been a parent, then at this point you can look and say, we don't say children are bad, we say sometimes that the things that they have done are bad. It's an important distinction which respects individuals and is positive in dealing with them, but allows everybody to move forwards and onwards at the end of it.